Hello and welcome to episode 1187 of The Sleeper and the Bus. It is Friday, June 16th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about you? I know you're coming off a late night softball writing, and we go early on Fridays. So how you doing?
I'm here. I am here. Yeah. I was up till like 2 a.m. or something like that. Mostly because I was writing after the softball game, and then I was like, oh, I'm just gonna jump right into bed because I got to be up at 5:30, and then I was all like smelled myself, and I was like, oh no, I can't just go to bed. I gotta go take a shower. So
I smelled myself. That's so funny. Oh man. Well, I'm jealous that you're playing softball. My team kind of disbanded as everyone sort of moved, really.
Yeah.
Has just kind of moved out of Austin, Texas altogether. So I haven't played softball in a while, and I'm certainly jealous when I hear you and others in the industry be like, "Oh, I had softball last," and I'm like, "Man, to swing a bat again." Anyway, we're gonna talk some two starts. I'm looking over here at the news item. I don't really see any news items we need to talk about. So I think we get right into two steps. I see Christian Encarnacion Strand playing right field on Thursday. So they're trying to work him in the outfield as an avenue to get him up because, interestingly, Joey Votto, also a Red, of course, homered in his AAA rehab on Thursday, and CES plays first. Votto does as well. They're, of course, going to give Votto, an opportunity to play, of course. So that's the tough part with CES. I do like picking him up, especially if you can stash him and you don't have to wait till he's called up because his power's great. But not a ton of movement there. Maybe Emmett Sheehan. Oh, I didn't see this. This should be main. Oh yeah, never mind. It is the number one news. Literally here in the last few minutes. Emmett Sheehan of the Dodgers is going to be called up to make his MLB debut today against the Giants. Joe Sheehan's kid. Not bad.
What?
No, I'm kidding.
That's that's awesome.
Joe Sheehan does have a kid, a lovely daughter, but no, not Emmett Sheehan, the prospect. So, Justin, we talked about this, like November, October of last year. Like, I think, I'm not saying like we coined it or we were on something early, but we started talking early about how they're going to have a youth movement. Although I think we talked about it more in the context of the hitters, while also acknowledging like, hey, they don't have a ton of pitching depth, but they'll probably handle that during the offseason, which is what we were saying back in November. They didn't. And now here we are, like they are kind of cycling through their prospects, really going for that youth movement. We've seen Gavin Stone flop, unfortunately. Bobby Miller's been pretty good. Michael Grove has been hit and miss. Now we have Emmett Sheehan. What do you know about Sheehan, and how interested are you in this call-up?
I mean, from our scouting report, I've never watched him pitch, so I don't want to pretend like I have. Looks like he has 2+ pitches and not a lot of command. So it'll be interesting to see how well that plays. We've seen some guys make it work with 2+ pitches like that. And it's not that he doesn't have a third pitch. It looks like he has kind of some secondary offerings that might work, but it's going to come down to like control and command for a guy like that. Probably a lot of strikeouts, but could struggle with home runs, could struggle with walks. So Giants aren't a bad team necessarily to go up against in your first outings. So
no.
Get ready to spend $300+ on Fab again.
If he drops 7 scoreless or some crap like that,
at some point people have to run out of money. I know we keep saying it.
I know we keep saying it, but then every week somebody pulls fucking $600 out of their.
I don't know if this is like a product of inflation, like where like NFBC just keeps printing money.
The inflation has gone so crazy in the country that it has seeped into fantasy baseball, folks. But yeah, so Emmett Sheehan is skipping AAA. He's coming up from AA, where he finished last year for 4 innings. Most of his season was spent in High A. This year, repeating AA. I don't even want to say repeating. Mostly like finishing AA, let's say. 53 and a third, 42% K rate. You love that. 11% walks. And you talked about the control. That's been prevalent throughout his stops. Emmett Sheehan has had double-digit walk rates pretty much everywhere. But I look at a spicy 20% swinging strike rate for the 23-year-old. And, skipping AAA for guys that for teams that have clubs in the PCL isn't necessarily a terrible thing. I don't really want prospect pitchers going and pitching in some of those zones anyway. So I'm interested to see what can happen here. He's 23, so he might be able to make the leap. The issue with Sheehan, if he does pop off, is if you're spinning it forward, which you probably would be maybe in a deeper league like an NL only or something. He only threw 67 innings last year, and has 53 so far this year. So I don't know how much we can really expect, right? But play it by ear here. I think we don't go too far into the future, regardless. Let's see where Sheehan would line up if he does well.
He's also 23, so maybe they don't want to baby him quite as much. But
exactly, like this
still
isn't
not
a
a lot of
20-year-old skipping AAA. But with Sheehan starting today, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, they only have 5 games next week, so he wouldn't necessarily have to start or even be able to start next week. So that adds another interesting wrinkle. He goes off today, let's say Sheehan, and then isn't lined up for a start next week. It would be Kershaw, Grove, Miller, Gonsolin, and then Kershaw again, or
Urias probably is back by then, unless.
Oh, okay, so then that would even.
My guess is a one and done type of situation, and then Sheehan goes back down to Double A, or maybe they send him to Triple A for the first time. Urias has just had a couple of minor setbacks in his rehab. I don't expect him to be out very long, so especially if they've got a 5-game week next week.
Yeah, that's the thing too.
Yeah, I don't see Sheehan having a whole lot of staying power.
Okay, so even if he dominates, don't go spending a ton of money on somebody who might not even be there for you literally next week. But
plus, Syndergaard's just out with a blister, so I mean, unless
that could be a long blister with how he's pitched, though.
Well, and he could just end up right back in the bullpen, or even DF8 or something at this point.
I love him, but it's been really bad. It's been really bad. He's a guy I root for, but I understand, like, from the fantasy perspective.
I mean, like, I wasn't in on Syndergaard at all, in draft season, but watching that interview with him, just talking about, like, he's just not the guy that he once was, and he just wishes he was just so, like, heart-wrenching. I just felt so bad for the guy.
I do, too. And, again, because I love Thor, and I want him to be good, too. I want him to be Thor. But he's not. He's very firmly Noah Syndergaard, or as some people have termed him, Fat Thor. Not that he's fat, but they're making a reference to the movies when Thor got fat. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk some two-steps. Emmett Sheehan. Let's go ahead and make sure I put that on the sheet here. So there we go. Let's talk two-step guys. There's a bunch of interesting ones next week. I think this week we had a lot of stars because we had a pretty thin list because it was so many obvious guys. Next week we got some interesting choices here. Let's start with Boston. They got Kutter Crawford and Garrett Whitlock going off against at Minnesota and home to Seattle. Let's start with, well, first off, who do you think is the better of the two?
I mean, I think Whitlock is better, too, from a straight skills perspective and from a sit-start perspective. The hard part with Kutter Crawford is I just don't know if he's going to go deep enough into the game to matter at this point. Yeah.
I mean, they're stretching him out. What was the last outing? I'm looking right now.
I think he went 4.
Okay, let me check the pitch counts real quick. He went 80 pitches. So yeah, it did only yield, I think, 4 innings, like you said. Yeah, 4 on the button, but it was 80 pitches. So I think that's pretty well stretched out enough to be able to get 5 if Crawford's pitching well. He also gave up 4 runs, 5 hits, 3 walks. So he wasn't able to get through 5 there. I think if he's pitching well, he can get there with 80 plus pitches. So Whitlock has been the better guy. I tend to agree with that too. Where are you starting Whitlock here? Are you picking him up anywhere for this two-step? Because he's got some availability in shallow formats. What do you think of Whitlock?
I think I'm starting Whitlock everywhere, or pretty much everywhere. He's just such an unhittable force when he is on. Yeah. And I'm not super worried about the Mariners' offense. It has not completely clicked as of yet.
Neither of these offenses.
And even with Buxton back, I'm not really worried about Minnesota either. So
no, I respect both, right? Like both offenses are solid. I wouldn't be surprised if either rise up against either of these pitchers, but neither Seattle nor Minnesota make me run from an intriguing streamer, which Whitlock definitely is. 33% rostered at Yahoo, so a lot of availability. And I agree with you. I would start him in all formats. So
Yeah.
he's a streamer that I'm picking up in 10s, 12s. Garrett Whitlock is, and I'm going for him.
Last two outings,
sorry.
13 and third. Over the last two outings, 13 strikeouts.
That's great.
Only 2 walks, only 1 home run given up. So, like he has been over his last 2 starts, just been really, really good.
Yeah, and I think he's somebody who could really be much higher rostered as the season goes on, and we could see Whitlock not even necessarily be available in some of those shallower formats. Crawford's a bit different. I do like Crawford. My buddy Greg, huge Crawford guy, and definitely sees the talent there. I see it as well. I do really think this guy can be something. He is, I think, stretched out with the 80 pitches last time, so I think that's less of a concern now. We're looking at a 19% strikeout minus walk, done mostly in the bullpen. Worth acknowledging that. But if Crawford is capable of getting at least 5 innings, where do you start to feel comfortable with him? Is he somebody that you're picking up and stashing? Do you want to use him for this 2-start in a 12-teamer, 15-teamer? What's up with Crawford for you? I can't imagine you're going 10 depth, but how deep would you go with Crawford?
I think 15 is probably what I'm looking at. I mean, obviously, really depends on what your other options are, but in a 15, like, it's just so hard not to start a guy who's a 2-start because there's so few options out on the wire. I remember at Fab last week, like trying to find a starting pitcher to like even just pick up was a process in itself.
I don't even know.
It's like, Patrick Corbin's out there. Do I really want to play that game again? Like,
I've done that. I've seriously looked into Patrick Corbin more than once this year, and I feel bad about it. I feel really bad.
Yeah, he feels bad about it too.
He is pitching all right relative to where he's been recently. I like Crawford 15s for sure. Definitely picking him up there. I think I would be open in 12s, but he's only 5% rostered at Yahoo. So there's probably more guys likely available, even guys that we're going to talk about. Pick up Whitlock over Crawford. If you're in a tighter 12 where, Whitlock's long gone, I think Crawford comes into play. Our next guy here, Yusei Kikuchi. I'm never really in on Yusei Kikuchi. However, Justin, if you were to perfectly set up a 2-step that might get me to even consider him, because we don't put guys on the list that are automatics. Like, we're not going to put Garrett Cole on here. But I also try not to put guys that are automatic no's as well. And so Kikuchi, probably an automatic no in a lot of scenarios. But at Miami, home to Oakland, probably the best, outside of maybe at Miami, at Oakland, probably the best setup that you could generate for this homer-heavy pitcher. He has a 2.4 homer per 9 for Kikuchi. 16% strikeout minus walk isn't bad, but with that whip, 137 and all those homers, it's scary. Is this enough at Miami, home to Oakland, to get you in on Kikuchi for a 2-step? And if so, where? I imagine big leagues only, if anywhere.
Pitched well enough yesterday to stay in there against the Orioles too.
Hey, you and Tristan got your Tyler Wells outing though.
We did.
That was fantastic.
I appreciated that, even with 2 home runs given up to Danny Jansen on my bench. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing: Miami's actually been really good against left-handed pitching this year. They are 5th in Major League Baseball against lefties. If you're just looking at WOBA, so it's not quite as easy as an outing as would be, or as you would maybe think. They suck. Against right-handed pitching, against left-handed pitching, against no-handed pitching, the A's are not good at all. So,
I did see a guy headbutt the ball against them. That's how he pitched it and struck out the side twice.
Well, Hogan Harris is, he's a god. So, I just have a really hard time trusting Kikuchi. I guess in 15-team league mix, like if you're really, really looking for a gamble, it's not the worst of gambles to make. And I'll probably write him up today for my 2-start pitching article, but for the most part, I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I can see Kikuchi being on the board, but that's about it. I'd take Crawford.
This is the one where it's like you go, if you can't use him here, you can't use him anywhere.
100%. If you are still holding him, there is no better option for Kikuchi than this, even with the issue, even with Miami having some strength against lefties. You got to take that shot in their park, and then you get the Oakland start. Yeah, if you're ever going to use Kikuchi, I think this is it. I can understand it in 15s. I still am looking for reasons not to, though. So I would rather go with not the next guy, the second to next guy that we're going to talk about. But let's talk Jesse Scholtens. I think I'm saying that last name right. Scholtens for the White Sox. He's been up already this year and pitched a bit. He gets versus Texas versus Boston, which is a pretty easy no. And I guess I did say earlier that I try not to include guys that are firm no's. But I didn't do this part of the list. You did because somebody fell asleep at their chair waiting for the pod to start. And it was actually me, even though you're the one who wakes up at 5:30. So, yeah, you put Scholtens on here. I'm not saying that to, like, diss you or anything. I'm just saying, like, he's on here. Are you finding any interest in him, though, next week with Texas-Boston both at home?
He has an almost 1-to-1 walk to strikeout ratio, and
that's good.
It's really, really bad on both accounts because we're talking about a guy who's like striking out under 5 per 9 and almost walking 5 per 9. So,
okay, obviously a 1-to-1 strikeout to walk as a pitcher would never really be good, right? One of them has to be horrendous. What would be your ideal there? Would you rather somebody that they're 1-to-1, they have 10 Ks per 9, but also 10 walks, so you got to work?
Yeah, that's okay. Exactly what I mean. Like, he can't find the strike zone anyways, but people seem to swing outside of it for him. Yeah, that I would much prefer that to the guy who is like, hey, he's not walking a lot of guys, but
1 walk per 9, but 1 strikeout per 9.
He hasn't struck out anybody since May. Like,
that would be worse. I agree.
I would prefer the former.
Scholtens is closer to that with 4.9, 4.3 walks, strikeouts. So we are a full pass here, even like AL only. Yeah. Okay, Let's move on to Civale. Now, he is somebody I would take over Kikuchi for sure. He gets Oakland and Milwaukee at home. He is more of a finesse guy, right? We know that, but he gets the job done. You know, Cal Quantrill, Aaron Civale, these guys, they've had these finesse guys. They've had elite dominant guys. They've run the gamut with the development guys in Cleveland, but I've always liked Civale. He's always, pretty solid. He'll have his bumps here and there, but it's usually followed by an IL stint. Then he gets back on track, and the kind of like high 3s, low 4s ERA guy that is pretty reliable in deeper formats that you and I mostly play is why I have such fondness for Civale. But this year so far, 2.67 ERA, 126 WHIP says the ERA is going to come back up, but it's been good thus far. Are you jumping on this Oakland Milwaukee in something shallower than 15s? Because obviously Civale will be rostered and started there.
I mean, he's listening to us. Go ahead. Rather have the guy walk in the yard, but also getting strikeouts and going, hey, that's what I'm kind of trying to do because the last 3 starts, he's got a 5 walk per 9 and almost 9 strikeout per 9. But I mean, these are 2 pretty good matchups. Oakland, like I said, one of the worst teams ever constructed, and the Brewers are not a super scary offense. So I'm totally fine. Well, I'm totally fine rolling with this one.
And I would consider this in 12s for Civale, and I would go Civale over Kikuchi.
Yeah.
All right. Michael Lorenzen has been pitching pretty well lately. His last one, not as good, but all in all, not too bad of a season right now for the Tigers. He gets KC and Minnesota, both at home, I think. KC, Minnesota. Yes, both at home. So both in Comerica for Michael Lorenzen. How have you been finding him this year with his 4.23 ERA, 109 WHIP, very 15-team viable? Are you dipping into 12s at all with Lorenzen on the KC and Minnesota matchups?
Remember a few years ago we had like a discussion. I think it was on Kenta Maeda where Kenta Maeda, I think maybe coming off the 2020 year where like he never faced like a team that was actually good because he only really faced his division.
Yes.
This has been the Michael Lorenzen story. In the last 2 starts, he's gone outside of the division and just gotten wrecked. So
Arizona and Atlanta, 12 runs and 12 2/3. There you go.
I picked him up earlier on in the season, or maybe even drafted him because I'm in a dynasty league where I'm not competing, but I need to get an innings limit so I don't get like penalized on my draft rank.
Oh yeah.
And so like I've been trying to soak up bad innings, and he was screwing me early on. But now we're getting to the Michael Lorenzen I know and love that is not good.
You know what's scary is when you're looking at the game log of Michael Lorenzen, it's 5 outings of 5+ earned runs, which, again, you can't fake a good outing with that. That's a 5 ERA even if you finish the game. So that's just inherently bad. The other 6 outings are 0 or 1 earned run. So like he's been so good in those 6, so bad in the other 5. Who are you getting? I guess, the probability of it is probably 1 up, 1 down. So he might rock KC this time and then get hit by Minnesota. KC actually had drops one of those 5 burgers on him on May 22nd at KC, 5 earned in 5 2/3 for Lorenzen. So it's definitely 15 team viable. In 12s, I think he's probably even, I might even go Kikuchi over Lorenzen.
Yeah, I probably do go Kikuchi over Lorenzen. Thing is, Kansas City is just as bad as Oakland. I think they have a worse record. Like,
don't put too much in the May 22nd start thinking that Lorenzen's going to get hit by them again. That seems more like the anomaly than the trend. It's just the Ks aren't great. The win probability isn't great. Yeah. That's why it's harder in 12s for Lorenzen. And I do think even Kikuchi could give up 4 or 5 runs to one of those teams and still get a dub because they're beating the hell out of some Oakland pitcher.
Exactly.
Except for Hogan Harris or JP Sears. They're both amazing. All right, so we like Lorenzen a little bit, 15s, not really so much 12s. Look who might be coming back. Or, it's penciled in right now, and I hope this stays. Obviously things could change on a rehab. But Tarik Skubal is slated to be back and get the same setup of KC, Minnesota next week. God, let that happen, please. As a Tigers fan, I would love to see that. What do you think if Skubal does come up and get a 2-step?
I think this is just a stash. So it's not a matter of using him this week. He hasn't gone more than 3 innings in any of his 3 rehab starts. So I just don't know that he's going to go deep enough into the game to register a win, much less a quality start. I love Skubal from a straight skills perspective if he's healthy. So I'm totally down like picking him up and kind of waiting and seeing when he gets stretched out enough that you can qualify for win. But
he might not get the 2-step, by the way, because they only play 6 games. So Reese Olson might just throw on Tuesday and then Skubal back on the weekend. But it's worth mentioning him anyway because he's coming back and he does make for an interesting stash. Your point about him not being stretched out enough to be like an instant scoop right now is a great call. Where are you stashing Skubal? 15's obvious. So basically I'm asking if 12s or 10s, are you going to have enough interest in Skubal? Do you want to stash now, drop him on an IL spot? How are you playing this with Scoobs while we wait to see what's going on with him?
Yeah, if I can drop him on an IL spot, I'll pick him up in 12s for sure. And I think even if I can't, I might. I think in 12s, especially where you've got deeper benches, I think I would. I think I would scoop and put him. I mean, the strikeout upside is just so nice with him. It's still. I mean, even though they moved in the fences, it's still a great place to pitch. So I like Skubal a lot. I was bummed when he got hurt. So I think this is a good opportunity to kind of stash him and hope for the best.
I fully agree. I think you want to go ahead and scoop him now. See if you can get Skubal before anyone's paying attention. Obviously, in like the NFBC format, unless he was drafted in a league, you can't pick him up. But most other leagues, it's free range. And I don't think he was held on the IL in a lot of those formats because teams quickly got, more present guys that they had to put on their limited ILs. So you're going to find a lot of Skubal availability. I'm down to jump it early, even if he doesn't line up for 2 this week. I'm not going to make you discuss Jordan Lyles, so I'm going to cross him out.
I was just about to type.
But Daniel Lynch, who we did talk about yesterday with Tristan, comes to Detroit and then goes to Detroit and then goes back home to face Tampa Bay. So that's a classic 1 up, 1 down with the streamer. You talked about some of your frustrations with him for that last outing. Where, again, I want to give him a little bit of credit on the 7 earned run outing. I know that sounds like a weird sentence, but he gave up 5 of those in the 5th. He could have easily been done there. At least he gave you those 2 extra innings to soften the blow a little bit. And I might sound like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. That can be so valuable when a guy, can get those extra tack-on innings to at least undercut the bad ERA a little bit. But it was a rough outing. He had 3 decent outings before that with Daniel Lynch. Where do you stand with him now facing at Detroit, home to Tampa?
I I'm just not sure I trust that Tampa Bay outing. Tampa's been like the second best or best team in baseball, depending on what stat you're looking at, against left-handed pitching this year. And while Detroit isn't a very good offense in general and isn't very good against lefties specifically, I just don't trust Daniel Lynch. So
I think that's fair.
I should have listened to Sir Nick Pollock. I just,
Freaking Sir Nick Pollock, man. He is a knight in shining armor. Yeah, I'd be careful with Lynch here if you're talking about like dipping into 12s. I just don't think you can put that Tampa Bay start out there. I'd take Crawford, Kikuchi, Lorenzen, Civale, all of them over him in the 12 because that Tampa start just looms there, terrifying me.
Yeah.
We did talk about this guy with Tristan as well, but let's get a more thorough outlook on Edward Cabrera, who we know has gobs of talent, right? It's all about whether or not he's keeping the walks under control. I think I mentioned yesterday that when he does, Edward Cabrera is literally matchup proof. If you could guarantee me that 2 walks or fewer, I would literally start him against any team in most formats, to be honest. However, you could never guarantee me that because that's just not Edward Cabrera's game. Only, let's see, 7 of his starts do have 2 or fewer walks, but then 8 have 3 or more. Or excuse me, 7. So it's an even 14, even 7 and 7 on the 3 and over walks and 2 or fewer. So you never know what you're getting. You get Toronto and Pittsburgh both at home. Are you willing to take on a really good offense in Toronto and a shockingly solid offense? Nobody called that. I heard nobody talking about Pittsburgh's offense. Not a single person. Zero people.
How dare you?
I'm sure the audience agrees. We heard nobody in the offseason talking Pittsburgh's offense.
How dare you not give me credit on Father's Day weekend?
You did. You did indeed say, hey, watch out. They're sneaky. And here they are in first. Their offense can be froggy. Is that enough to scare you off of Cabrera at all with the Toronto start as well?
Yeah, I think I think I saw a stat like that Pittsburgh had the second or third most games where they didn't score a run this season. So like they can get shut out pretty easily, but I do not trust this one at all, especially because Pittsburgh walks the 4th most amount in baseball against right-handed pitching. So Edward Cabrera is not the guy you want to mess around with, and then you get the Toronto offense as well. I do not. I think I would rather start Kikuchi, honestly.
No, stop.
At least the matchups are.
Stop. The matchups are wonderful for Kikuchi.
Edward Cabrera has a 140 whip. Like
I know it
just
is
murdering your whip right now.
Yep. And the contrary to what I was saying about him being matchup proof when he's on is that literally anyone can smoke him when he's off. I think I made the case that me, you, Tristan, and 6 others could do some damage against him when he's walking the yard. So it's a high risk situation. I think I still like Cabrera a bit more than Kikuchi, despite the matchups, but I totally understand shallower formats not starting Cabrera. Where are you at with him in 15s? Is Cabrera on the border for you in 15s?
I think he is on the border.
Okay, so you're really nervous.
Yeah.
Understandably, by the way. I'm not saying that like you're crazy for being nervous about Edward Cabrera.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Pittsburgh, like I said, actually they're the 6th highest walk percentage.
Okay.
But still, that's a they're walking an almost 10% rate versus right-handed pitching this year.
Yeah.
And then Toronto, who's just I mean, they're just so powerful. They can crush anybody, and I don't want to mess with this one.
No, I think that's fair. I think you don't go to this one right away. There's a little bit of name value there because he was a huge prospect. And his upside of Edward Cabrera is alluring, but I don't think it's an automatic just go with this because it's a 2-step. Both are at home. It is a little nerve-wracking, though. Bailey Ober. I put him on the list only because I think sometimes my 15-team head permeates the entire fantasy landscape, and I'm like, Bailey Ober's a god. I love Bailey Ober, and I do feel that way. And he is 70% rostered at Yahoo, so I'm really thinking on 10s and lower. Is he in all formats? Start him all the time. Bailey Ober gets Boston and at Detroit. Is he that good where you're starting him in all formats? I am, but I got to check in because I know he's not as widely beloved in say, 10-teamers.
I think he is at the moment. I think he could very quickly become a guy where you need to play more matchups with him. I mean, he still puts over 50% of the balls that he allows in play in the air.
Well over,
Yeah, and while it hasn't come back to bite him, if you did listen to the episode with Draft Sheet was talking about how the Cleveland Guardians have had like the coldest temperatures this year, and so like a lot of those or NFC this AL Central teams have been dealing with like unseasonably cold weather, and now it's starting to heat up across the Midwest. I think a lot of the guys in Minnesota who are almost all fly ball guys are going to have problems. And so I do worry a little bit. This one is home versus Boston and at Detroit. So the one you really worried about is in Minnesota, and the one you don't worry about is at Detroit. So I think this is another good opportunity to get a really good couple starts from Ober. So I think he's a must start this week, and we start reevaluating next week.
I think that's totally fair because Ober is running a really low homer to fly ball rate. So I don't know if the homer suppression is fully believable. He ran a 5% mark in 56 innings last year, 8% mark this year in 57 and 2/3. So, 17% back in 2021 when he allowed 2 homers per 9. And we were always like, this Bailey Ober guy's got a lot of skills, but he's a home run machine, kind of like Kikuchi. But the last 2 years he's dug into those homers, but has it been suppression or just a good homer to fly ball rate? Right now, it looks like a good homer to fly ball rate. You got to be careful. This is a full go 2-step, but I agree. He's not a blind set it and forget it Bailey Ober. We have to stay checked in with him to make sure that those homers aren't getting him. He did give up 2 last time out. They happen to both be solos. So as long as when the regression comes, it's solos, we can live with that. But
he's following the Tyler Wells plan right now, and it's working right now. But you do wonder, like in the back of your mind, like, hey, when is this really going to kill me? Because it feels like it's gonna at some point.
That's why I sat Wells against Toronto. I played it cautiously with him and Bradish. It would have worked to start both. Process over results, and there'll probably be a time where I sit Bailey Ober in a tough matchup because of his homers, and then he does fine, and that's okay. I'm gonna stick with my strategies throughout the year and hopefully come up more often than not. Another guy that we did discuss with Tristan that you guys had been agonizing over because you both share Ranger Suarez on key teams. He dominated on y'all's bench. He gets Atlanta and the Mets next week, both at home. You talked a bit about him yesterday, but give us your thoughts on where Suarez is at as far as 15s, 12s, and 10s, and if you're starting him with this double 2-step. Couple of division foes that are pretty good when they want. Well, Atlanta's been good all year. The Mets kind of up and down. Are you scared by this, or are you going back to the well with Suarez after you lost out on the good start this week?
Oh man, this is so tricky because Atlanta has been the best team of baseball versus left-handed pitching from an OPS standpoint. And not even that particularly close. I mean, 30 points above the Rays in OPS against lefties. So, like, they've been crushing them. But you mentioned, like, they've been not as good recently. I think I'm trying to stay away from this one if I can.
Okay.
I just think that Suarez is one of those guys that can be a real whip killer when things aren't going well. And he's not a high strikeout upside guy either. So like you're not at least balancing like that high reward with the risk that comes along with him necessarily. He's been pitching really well as of late, so I understand wanting to roll with it in deeper formats, but I feel like this is a trap and he's gonna get fucking worked.
4 earned in his last 4 starts combined for Ranger Suarez, including a trip to the Mets, trip to the Diamondbacks, and a home start against the Dodgers. So, I mean, okay, so deep leagues, yes, on Suarez?
I think it's still maybe.
Okay, so the mediums, no.
It's a probably, because they
probably deep.
You're not starting Kikuchi over him. You're not starting Lorenzen over him. So
those are literally my next questions. So there's still some consideration in like 12s for Suarez, but you're probably not getting there in 10s is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. I think I concur on that. Yes, deep leagues, considering in mediums, no in shallows. All right, let's talk about a couple of Pirates. Osvaldo Bido, who came up, made a spot start this week, actually looked pretty decent. Might be ready to stick with them and get a 2-start next week. And then Johan Oviedo. Actually, hang on. Now it says Rich Hill is in that Oviedo spot, at least according to what's it called? RotoWire. So let's go with that. Bido and Hill now getting the Cubs and at Miami. Let's start with Bido because he is a new guy. He's not like some sparkling prospect or anything. He's an older 20s guy. And by the way, we're still listing Oviedo too. So I don't know. It might be Oviedo. It might be Hill. We can talk both just in case. But Bido first. 27-year-old comes up. Not a journeyman, has been with Pittsburgh the whole time, but not a prospect once you kind of reach your mid to late 20s. Has always had walk issues, has missed bats decently at AAA. Was having an all right year there, 4.55 ERA, 1.30. Feels like they just called him up because they needed an arm. He gave him 4 decent innings in his MLB debut. You seen anything here on Bido? It was against the Cubs, so he gets the Cubs again, and then a trip to Miami. Is there anything appealing here? He did have 6 strikeouts in the 4 innings, 7 base runners, 1 run. Osvaldo Bido, put us on this guy.
I mean, feels like a guy that can be effective when he doesn't walk the yard. I don't know if he is like just a trap. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's had he hasn't had better than a 130 whip since 2019. So you're he's a potential whip killer. There are strikeouts there, and these are decent matchups. But I don't know. This feels like fake player. Don't mess with it.
What about NL only for Osvaldo Bido?
Yeah, I mean, NL only. I think you have such limited options that hey, if I 2-start guy off the wire, then you roll with it.
Yeah, but this has a lot of blow-up potential. You got to be very careful here. Even with getting the strikeouts in that debut, only had a 9% swinging strike rate, which it's 4 innings. I'm not saying that's who he is in the majors, but we don't know what Bido is. And again, he wasn't a prospect of any note, so we're kind of flying blind here. I'd be careful. Let's talk Hill, and then we'll talk Oviedo, because again, one's penciled in on one side, the other's penciled in on the other side as far as that other 2-step guy. Oviedo is an interesting arm to me. I really do like him. I think the idea of what he can be is appealing. We've talked about this before where we like the idea of somebody, but not necessarily starting them in practice. That's kind of where I'm at with Oviedo with his massively high whip at 147. 4.40 ERA for deep leagues is not the end of the world, but when it comes with that whip and not many strikeouts for what I think his arm could generate, 21% K rate, I find myself a little cold with Oviedo, but this is not a bad 2-step with the harder of the two, the Cubs being at home and then a trip to Miami. He's not a lefty, Oviedo, so he won't get the tougher side of Miami. Any interest in deep league Oviedo? He had been pitching quite well for a while and then got roughed up by these Cubs. Did sprinkle in 8 Ks with the 4 runs and 4 1/3, but his 6 starts before that were 3 runs or fewer across all of them. So where are you at on Johan Oviedo if he gets the 2-step?
Okay, so I know the last start from a numbers perspective isn't what you want to see, but he got BABIP to death in this one.
Okay,
because
I did not see that one.
Yeah, he had a 6.15 BABIP in the outing. It was he got really, really unlucky here, and he did exactly what I kind of wanted to see. He was filling up the zone, 47% zone rate. And it resulted in a ton of strikeouts and a ton of ground balls. This is exactly what I want to see from Oviedo. I'm a big fan of his, and I'm definitely, if he's doing the 2-step, which I don't think he is, which I do think he is. I think Rich Hill isn't getting the 2-step because Hill's pitching today. Oviedo pitched yesterday, so
Hill's pitching
sense.
Today. Oh yeah, then he won't get it. I do think RotoWire's off on that one.
Yeah, so I think I am starting Oviedo in most formats. I think I'm starting him over guys like Ranger Suarez and Lorenzen and Kikuchi. I think he's a pretty good bet this week to at least rack up some strikeouts, and as long as he doesn't get BABIP to death, turn out some pretty good outings.
Yeah, I'm with you on Oviedo. I like him too. And you mentioned he got BABIP to get at the Cubs, and it was really only the last inning that was bad. He gave up 3 of those 4 runs in the 5th with the 8 punchies and the 1 walk. So got away from him a little bit, but I think he could rebound here with these 2 starts. Let's just talk Hill briefly then, because I agree with you. If he's going today, then he's not going to get a 2-step. But he's doing his Rich Hill thing again, where he's putting out some really appealing starts to make him an attractive pickup on the wire. But his last 5 starts really give you the essence of the risk that you're taking. 0, 5, 6, 1, and 2 earned runs. So that little 5-pack there really runs the gamut of the greatness to the trouble that you can get with Rich Hill. And it's not matchup dependent either. So what do you do with Rich Hill?
I'd argue it is matchup dependent.
Go ahead,
Look at those last 5 starts. Good one at Detroit, bad one versus Texas, bad one at San Francisco, good one versus St. Louis, good one versus the Mets. Like,
well, doesn't St. Louis hit, despite how god awful they are? Did they not hit lefties? I mean, they hit righties pretty decently.
Let's see. I'll take a look real quick, but no, they're 18th in OPS versus left-handed pitching this year. So they've got members of that team that can hit lefties, but as a whole, they just suck this year for no apparent reason.
Yeah, I don't understand it. Last 30 days, they're 20th as well. So they're trending down a little bit as well for the Cards. Okay, so maybe it is a bit more matchup based then. So let's say he gets Miami. We're starting to now. They've been tougher, as you highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
Would you go for him? Would you be more interested if Hill gets the Cubs or at Miami for a 12-team type stream this week?
Cubs have been good against lefties too, so I think maybe I just skip this one with Rich Hill. Both have been both Miami and Chicago have been top 10 against left-handed pitching this year in terms of OPS.
You still starting him in 15s though, regardless of the matchup?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, unless you got other options, you might have a situation where you can bench him. But I think Rich Hill's no worse than a team streamer in 15s, standard streamer in 12s, and maybe the occasional go for in a 10, depending on what's available on the wire. I kept this guy on the list, even though he might be more of an automatic. Michael Wacha continues to dominate here, so I really wanted to talk about him. He has a 2.89 ERA and a 1.06 WHIP. He's just been really great this year. He's also got a 16% strikeout minus walk rate, which is pretty solid. He's keeping the ball in the yard with a 0.7 homer per 9, which is nearly half of last year's 1.3 mark. Wacha's been great. Do you believe it? He goes to San Francisco and home to Washington this week. I think the matchups are good, but I'm more interested in where you're at with him as far as being a set it and forget it in 15s.
This is such a weird set of matchups, too, because you've got Washington, who doesn't strike out, but really sucks against right-handed pitching, just in general. And then you got the Giants, who are pretty good against right-handed pitching, but strike out all the time.
Yeah, don't give me the Ks. So I think the combo of the week should be nice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I'm rolling with is the combo of that week. And, hoping that, he blanks Washington, but maybe you don't get a ton of strikeouts. You get a bunch of them versus San Francisco, and hopefully he doesn't get kind of killed in that matchup, especially because I believe, it's in San Francisco. So, and then home versus Washington. So, I think this is probably a must start at this point. Like, I do expect some regression from Wacha, but I think he can keep getting away with what he's been doing. I'm in on this one.
Are you going for Wacha in 10s right now? I think he's 81% at Yahoo, so he's not even super available in 12s. Is Wacha a must start in 10s right now with the way he's been rolling?
I never want to say a must start in a 10 because it really just depends on what your other options are.
Yeah,
you might have a loaded rotation, especially if you're, like we talked about with yesterday with Tristan, they only have 7 starting pitcher spots. So like a 10 team with 7 starting pitcher spots, he may not register as a must start.
He has been 19th among starters this year.
Yeah, he's pretty damn close to it.
Crazy. Yeah, he's been rolling. I love Wacha, man. I really have throughout his career. So, I agree, though. Even being 19th ranked pitcher in 10s, there is a world where he's not a must just because you have a setup where you've just got a bunch of studs. I will say in a 2-step, he's probably pretty close to a must, even in 10s. But Wacha's rolling right now. Anywhere that he's available, jump on board for sure. I just want to talk this handsome devil here just to check in on him. Tyler Glasnow is back and still way too good looking. Doesn't seem fair. But he's been pitching fine. The walks are up, though. And this is something that he struggled with early in his career. It's 21 innings. I don't want to make too much out of it, Justin. Just kind of a check in here. I know you're starting him against Baltimore, KC, all formats, unless you want to say something to the contrary. But where are you at with Glasnow after 4 starts? You feeling good about him? You think he's going to be a summer stud for people? What's up with Glasnow? Where have you been after his 4 starts?
So what do we say about first full season back from Tommy John?
Be careful.
Well, and what do they struggle with?
Command is the last thing to come into the picture.
Yeah, the command and control are always issues when you're coming back, and we're seeing that, right? He's having a little bit of trouble with walks, a little bit of trouble with home runs. It hasn't been atrocious, and he's got such great stuff. He gets away with it. So I'm not like, I mean, he's in the must start tier.
Yeah.
Especially with these matchups. But I wouldn't be super worried about this necessarily, because this is what we kind of expect from guys coming back from Tommy John. So if you've been rolling with Glasnow, continue to roll with him, especially in these matchups. We're not worried about this.
Yep, totally agree there, and I feel good about him as well. I think he is somebody that, obviously health is always the biggest issue. If he's healthy, I think he's going to be a summer gem for folks. Your boy Andrew Heaney doing Andrew Heaney things, which isn't always a positive comment. It can have elements of positivity that usually means that he's striking guys out, but it also usually means that he's giving up walks and or getting hurt. Well, thankfully he's not getting hurt. He's been healthy, but he gets trips to the White Sox and the Yankees, which is not bad, by the way. The White Sox suck, and the Yankees without Judge also suck. Is that enough for your boy here? Because he hasn't been pitching super well lately during this month with 10 walks in his last 3 outings. Are you nervous about this being an indicator for Heaney, or is this just a bump and you're excited for this 2-step? Andrew Heaney, what do you think?
He's gone over the 60-inning threshold, and all of a sudden he can't control anything.
That's a big workload for him.
Yeah, this feels like the time where Andrew Heaney gets hurt. I dropped him in our 12-team Yahoo league that we do for the pod. So I mean, these aren't bad matchups, but I don't know that I'm even willing to risk this in a 10 or a 12. Like I said, I dropped him.
Justin's not starting Andrew Heaney, then nobody's starting him, right?
That feels like the correct answer. I just there's such huge blow up potential that I understand, like in a 15 teamer, like you probably don't have better options, and these are good matchups, but man, he's gonna get murdered in one of these. I don't know which one, but he's gonna get murdered.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like when he's wobbly, Heaney can get got by anybody. And so while these are good matchups, and I do think you have to start him in a 15. I mean, you got better options. You don't have to, but he's certainly on the table for 15s. Is more of a Hail Mary throw in 12s, I think. Let's go to our litmus test here. Kikuchi or Heaney in 12s?
Oh.
It's really tough for me too, by the way.
I mean,
I think I go Heaney. Well, I was gonna say better team. Toronto and Texas are both awesome.
Were you a fan of The Office?
Oh yeah.
So you know the meme where
Jenna Fisher, aka Pam, is looking. It's the same picture.
The same picture. Yeah,
it's the same picture. Yeah,
they're both left-handed.
Home run issues. Yep. So then I think then you go to the matchups, which does lean Kikuchi. Even with Miami being tough, it's still at Miami, and you still have to go to Yankee Stadium, which even without Judge, they're not good. But I'd rather not do that. So I think I lean Kikuchi over Heaney, which feels gross to say.
I mean, the matchups are actually better for Heaney.
They really are, because again, Miami is pretty good against lefties. We have to acknowledge that.
I mean, the White Sox are the 27th team in baseball against left-handed pitching, and the Yankees are the 17th and don't have Judge. So I think I go Heaney here.
I mean, the matchups are
And they
Both on
both
the
have
road.
amazing offenses like behind them. Like,
True. Their supporting cast there, Toronto and Texas, of course, big support to put them in win potential. Man,
I think I'm going.
I'm
I think I'm going Heaney here, but
okay. I think I'm slightly Kikuchi, but I can't argue too hard the other way. I don't know if you put much into this because it really is hard to care about home road splits when someone doesn't play an extreme park like Coors or something. But Heaney's been exponentially better on the road so far this year. 2.43
well,
ERA versus 5.35. Again, I don't know if I should even put
we
much
did
into
talk
that.
about yesterday that the park factors had shifted a little bit in Texas,
Playing
so maybe that is
playing a bit
a
more hitter
bit
friendly.
of yeah. I mean, let me take a look real quick at like where Heaney has played on the road. Well, I can tell you. Okay, so he's only had 4 or 5 starts on the road this year. But
Okay.
listen to these locations: at Tampa Bay, good place to pitch; at
Yep.
Baltimore, good place to pitch; at
Mm-hmm.
Oakland, good place to pitch; at Seattle, good place to pitch; at Houston, not good place to pitch.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, that's been that. Don't put too much into that. Don't start him
Yeah,
just because of that. Again, pick your favorite. Heaney, Kikuchi, they're this close. I got
yeah.
nothing between them. You pick whoever you like better
It's
there, man.
really a coin flip.
Yep, totally. And either could really burn you. That's the real message here is be careful with
Hmm.
either of them. All right, let's talk the baby Nats here. Both of them been pitching well. This is for shower formats. I think you're starting both in 15s easily. Josiah Gray, MacKenzie Gore, St. Louis at home, and a trip to San Diego. Josiah Gray is 41% in Yahoo leagues, and he's actually on your team in
Hmm.
our head-to-head league, and then 48% for Gore. So they're pretty available, and I have Gore on my team. They're pretty available in 12s and lower. How interested are you in Gray and Gore in those shallower formats where they're available with the St. Louis San Diego two-step?
I'm more interested in Gore.
Okay.
We're starting to see, some of the regression that we kind of expected from Josiah Gray to kind of creep back, and his whip has been really, really bad this year. So I think I prefer Gore. I think he's a little just bit safer of an NT, but in 15s, I think you're starting both these guys in
Oh yeah.
12s. It's really just dependent on your team, like how much can or what other options you potentially have. But like I would start Oviedo over both. I think I'm
You'd start
starting.
Oviedo over both of them?
I would,
Oh wow, that's a statement. That's a
yeah.
statement there. That's some love for
San Diego's
Oviedo, big
been
time.
really good against lefties this year, and
I'm always
uh,
nervous against the Padres. Even when the
yeah,
numbers say they haven't been pitching well, it's still the Padres. They're still a
yeah.
badass lineup, right?
Hmm.
So like I respect the numbers. Okay, I put the numbers out on my SP chart, but I still look at certain teams, even St. Louis. We talked about how we
Hmm.
can't bury those idiots until they're like dead and gone as far as that division. So these are two matchups where I could see either of them or both of them getting murked, but I like both arms. But Oviedo over both of them. That again, that is a statement there.
Yeah.
What about them versus Civale in 12s? So it's like a floor versus ceiling type of thing. Like Civale kind of always your steady, decent guy. Gray or Gore could jump up, but they could go low too. So what about Civale versus the two Nats
I
in
think I'm
12s?
I think I'm definitely taking Savali over Gray.
Okay.
Um, I think it comes down to what your team needs in terms of Gore versus Savali. If you
Ratios
watch
versus Ks.
strikeouts, yeah, strikeouts versus ratios, I think is kind of the question. So need
Okay.
ratios, go Savali. Need strikeouts, go
Go
Gore. And
Gore.
if it's neutral, you go Gore because the upside I think is much greater.
Okay, I think I agree with all that there. Civale again with the Oakland Milwaukee is nice, but yeah, Gray and Gore have definitely done a lot more this year that make them in the mix here. And I know you came into the season actually touting both, if I recall correctly. I know
Hmm.
you've been a
Yeah.
Josiah Gray guy and Gore, and they've been doing some nice things. So Nats actually have something to be excited about with these two pitchers. We'll see how both of them do, St. Louis and at San Diego. All right, Justin, some interesting names out there for people to go out and pick up. Regardless of the league type you're in, I think there's viable pickups for 15s, 12s, and 10s on the two-start landscape this week. As far as bidding goes, Is there a big dog this week? There isn't a big prospect call up for once, right? Unless Emmett Sheehan throws 9 scoreless.
Yeah.
Just go out and throw a shutout. No, he's not even gonna do that. He's gonna throw like 5 innings.
No.
It's not gonna be Emmett
I think
Sheehan.
it gets to be a little bit nicer. Like maybe there'll be someone called up over the weekend that'll screw us. I'm sure. But
I just want like a week where I'm not debating whether or not I want to spend. I mean, I don't have it anymore, so it's easier for me to not have to do that and be like, oh, do I want to spend this money? I don't have the money. I guess Matos, and that's the thing though too, is because we've been so conditioned to having like a stud of the week. I think you even mentioned this with regards to Matos. Don't get caught up with him being the stud of the week just because someone has to fill that spot. Sometimes there's no stud, and we don't think that Matos is necessarily a fantasy game changer. I think that's what you were trying to say yesterday with him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that could be interesting. I think I'm a little bit higher on him than you and Tristan were, but I also don't think he is a guy that you want to do a triple-digit bid, like, or even 10% of your remaining fab. Like, I wouldn't even.
I thought you were down on him, so I
no,
think
I
we're probably
think
pretty close.
He's got an opportunity. I think he can make good contact. He can steal bases, but
you just didn't want him to be some $250 guy.
Yeah, like he's a $30, $40 guy. He's not, at best $30, $40.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't if you only have 20 or $200, like don't even be going double digits on it. Like this should be like 5% of your remaining fab at best.
Are you talking directly to me? I have 200.
I'm directly talking to you.
200 something dollars left. What he does, like at his best, though, could really help me. But it's so hard to buy waiver guys for batting average because it's just such a volatile damn stat. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be a bonanza unless somebody gets called up and they have to pitch or hit by Saturday though, because even if they're called up on Sunday,
in
that
NFBC,
doesn't count in NFBC. I just want to throw out one last name before we go. We talk about Cleveland and all the things that they're able to do with their pitching development. Right now, they have ousted Quantrill and Plesac. Well, Quantrill went to the IL, Plesac got murked. We were wondering, well, what's going to happen with these young guys, Bybee and Allen, when MacKenzie, Civale, and them come back? Well, the chaff was cut. Cody Morris is back, and he's in the bullpen right now. I love his arm. Is he somebody that you'd stash in a deeper league for, as the next fill-in for them? Or are his own injury concerns too much to even worry about that right now with Cody Morris in Cleveland?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to enter the rotation. If another piece enters this rotation, it's Gavin Williams. Gavin Williams is the dude that I would go and stash right now if you're looking to stash the next pitcher, because he will be the next like big fab piece from the Guardians team. The question is, when is he up? Like, I think he's got an opening. I think unless there's an injury, I think he has to wait till the trade deadline.
I tend to agree. Yeah.
And can you hold on to a guy for a month and a half when we only have 3.5 months left? So I think it becomes that kind of question, like we talk about, like when a guy goes down with an oblique injury at this point in the season, like, is he worth holding on to? You got to kind of reverse that for those prospects. Are these guys worth holding on to until August?
Yep. No, I think that's the exact question you have to ask, and I don't know that Gavin Williams is necessarily worth holding, depending on your situation, how many reserves and all that. But keep tabs on him. And like I said, I like Cody Morris, but I agree that I think the injuries might just be piling up too much to where they might not even worry about starting him anymore.
Yeah, I just don't.
Relief guy.
They may start him in the future,
Maybe. Yeah.
If the Guardians aren't competing or like really close at the deadline, they're definitely a team that could try to sell. And Bieber is a guy they might want to try to get value from. See, maybe Civale is another guy they might want to try. So like that would make openings long term. But I think for 2023, I think Cody Morris is a reliever.
I think that's totally fair. I love him. Keep an eye on him. If he jumps into the rotation, we'll make a move, but we don't have to make a preemptive move.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, that's going to do it. Heading into the weekend, got any big plans? You and Jason working on Sunday?
We are, and I was actually, I kind of got a little distracted there because let's see. I believe I have a guess, and I was trying to
confirm
look
that.
up which guest I have. I can't remember. I believe it's a Ryan. It is a
Ryan.
I believe it's Ryan Venasio.
Perfect. Barn.
Yeah, who has a really cool different podcast for those of you who like multiple sports. He has a baseball / fantasy basketball podcast called In the Cut that he does with John Fish, big time NFBC player. So if you like basketball and baseball, that's a really, or if you just like one or the other, but clearly you like baseball if you're an hour in to this episode. So yeah, go check that out. And I do believe it's Ryan Venasio going to be coming on with me and Jason this weekend.
Perfect. All right, man. Well, I hope you have a great weekend, and you and I will talk on Monday.
All right. Take it easy.